This is Wally Inouye, and you're tuned in to the Not Snowboarding podcast coming to you from Hood River, Oregon. What are we going to do? How can we drain these pools or sneak into people's backyards without getting caught? And so we decided to come up with the fictitious pool company. So that's how IPS came about, Inouye's Pool Service. And so we made t-shirts and made this sign, serviced by IPS, and put it on the front yard and went back there and started draining pools, and we kind of got away with it after that.
Welcome to episode number 32 of the Not Snowboarding podcast. I'm your host, Nate Mousson. Before we get into today's episode, I have some really big news. I've partnered with what I think is going to be the most disruptive and innovative company in the custom snowboard marketplace, Custom Cult Snowboards. First off, we're going to have Marty, the owner of Custom Cult, on an upcoming episode. He's literally a mad scientist of snowboard design. He's been designing snowboards for decades. Many of his board designs have won the magazine's Goodwood Awards and similar type awards over the years. So what is Custom Cult Snowboards? It's a totally new way to buy a snowboard. Here's how it works. Go to customcultsnowboards.com and select me, Nate Mousson, as your board designer. Under riding type, select from either my small mountain freestyle model for smaller boards geared towards the mid-Atlantic crowd, or the all-mountain model if you live where there are real mountains. Enter your height, weight, boot size, inseam, angle of your feet, your name, and your email. Marty's proprietary software, which he wrote himself, will calculate out a version of my board scaled specifically for you. A one-off custom board of sorts. This is just the baseline. From here, you can change every single detail of the board to your liking. You can adjust the waist width, the nose shape, the tail shape, the camber profile, and so on. He has a ton of upgrade options as well. You can turn your board into a split board if you want. You can add a faster base material, or you can add an extra strong core to the board. I'm so excited to be working with Marty and to have the opportunity to design my own boards and to share them with the world. And as cliche as it sounds, this really is a paradigm-shifting way of buying a snowboard. The company just launched, and I'll be frank, I pushed Marty to launch sooner than he was comfortable with. So you'll notice things change on the site over the next couple of weeks as we continue to grow and add features to the website. Marty would also welcome your feedback and questions. You can contact him directly at info@customcultsnowboards.com. Through the end of October, anyone that orders my board can get a free Thug Core upgrade. That's an extra tough poplar wood core that's more resistant to impact and fatigue over time. Just shoot an email to info@customcultsnowboards.com after you order and tell them that you want the Not Snowboarding Podcast free Thug Core upgrade. I'm also open to field any questions about the boards that I've designed. Just shoot me an email at nate@shredsoles.com. As always, the podcast is sponsored by Shredsoles, the only aftermarket snowboarding-specific insoles. Just use discount code TNSP at checkout at shredsoles.com until the end of October and get 10% off and free shipping. Finally, thanks again to everyone that's supporting the podcast by using the Amazon banner ad located at the Not Snowboarding Podcast website. Clicking through that ad before shopping on Amazon kicks AJ and me a small commission on whatever you buy. It doesn't cost you anything, and it really helps the podcast stay afloat. Please bookmark the page and use it, especially as you're doing your holiday shopping in the coming weeks. Okay, what can I say about Wally? Well, he's a skater, a chef, a surfer, an artist, a snowboarder, a family man, and an entrepreneur. He was one of the first, if not the first person to do a wall ride on a skateboard, hence his nickname, Wally. He has stories for days, and like he says during the podcast, I've seen and done a lot during these 56 years. Let's jump into the episode.
The bark beetle problem here?
There is.
Okay.
So, I don't mind the ones that are started by lightning versus man-made ones,
Right.
The ones that are arson, that's that's no call for. The ones that are lightened out in the middle of forest where it's hard to get to, I think it's all a part of the environment, how it redoes itself.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
What? Probably a couple 100, 300 years, and fires were just
raging.
Don't put those out. You know.
Yeah.
And all the animals and it. You know, I think it's a way of recomposting the soil.
Okay.
I always heard as a kid that there were even certain types of trees that the nut or the acorn, the actual seed wouldn't come out of it until there was a heat from a fire to open it.
That's quite possible. You know, I mean, that's my whole take on it, that, you know, someone from above is doing it, you know, and and the lightning strikes and starts a fire, and then probably next week the heavy rains will come and put them all out.
Well, that's the deal in the national parks, is they let them, if it's a natural fire, they let it run until it's either approaching the park border or approaching some sort of park infrastructure, right? So, you know, the ranger stations or the different tourist areas.
Right. So you must be Nate.
I am. I just kind of jumped in conversation there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were just talking about forest fires, and hopefully it was going to rain. So.
Yeah.
Super excited to talk with you, Wally. Thanks for taking the time.
Oh, I appreciate it. I mean, it sucks for the people who lose their homes, but we have to learn as a society that we build these homes in places that will get fires or earthquakes or floods, or the volcano is going to go off or something, you know?
Yeah.
There's no guarantee on any of it. I think that people, especially that grow up in a city or a more populous area, take it for granted that it's almost like a right. That this area we're living in is, you know, going to be free of natural disaster. This is our area. This is human area. It's not. The Earth is everything, like you were saying earlier.
How do we do this? How do we start out?
We started.
Oh,
we started recording.
We
started. We just jumped right into it, Wally. We don't waste time. So Wally's having some food right now, Nate. And I'm sitting in his home, and it is a pretty rad place, I must say that.
We're in my little man cave, I guess.
Yeah. It's a little sanctuary. And Wally invited me into his sanctuary.
What does it look like?
It's got a purple curtain, like a lavender curtain. It's got like a cool picture of like the sand, like someone walking through the sand and then doing like a sand angel. I really like that. It's got some covers Wally was on. How old were you when you were on these covers? You went to skateboarder?
17, 18,
okay.
19. It's a 10 by 10 sunroom. So 2 walls are walls, and then the 2 outside perimeter walls are all kind of picture windows. Looks like about 5 by 3 windows. And there's 6 of them.
And the view is like an orchard.
It gets hot in the summertime and cold in the wintertime. And if those trees weren't there looking north, we would see Mount Adams.
Okay.
So I live on a 100-acre organic orchard. And the orchard has been an organic orchard since 1989. And the Stewart family, who lives and owns and runs the orchard, is Columbia Gorge Juice Company.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
when you go into the stores and you see it and it's all organic juice, that's what this orchard is. So it's pears and apples and cherries. And so to the north of us is Mount Adams, and to the south you can see Mount Hood from my house.
Yeah.
What attracted you to that area?
Well, it was... I came here on a working vacation to airbrush sailboards. So I was an art director in Redondo Beach, California, and I ran a staff of 6 people in the art department. We did 17 different trade magazines in the automotive, medical export industries. And so I got a phone call from this particular board manufacturer, Deal Sailboards, Bob Deal. And he had heard that I was an airbrusher, and his airbrusher went to Alaska to go fishing for 3 weeks. So he asked me if I would come up and fill in for him for 3 weeks. And I had vacation time, so I took vacation time and came up.
You took vacation time to work.
I took vacation time to work, right? So you know, and I didn't know much about Oregon and the gorge, and so I reached out to a friend of mine, Jeff King, because he was a windsurfer, and I said, hey, this guy by the name of Bob Deal from Deal Sailboards wants to fly me up to Oregon to this place called the Gorge, and he just all of a sudden just got this big smile and his eyes grew big, and you're gonna go to the Gorge? No way, that place is awesome. So I said, wow, this could be really cool. And then when I flew into the airport, this guy, Greg Hunter, who was Australian, he picked me up. And so I built surfboards with him in San Diego, and he was my roommate. And so I put 2 to 2 together how he got my name and how I came up here.
Right.
And so I came up here, and they said to paint like what my style was. And at the time, prior to the publishing company, I was airbrushing for companies like Lightning Bolt, Hot Stuff, Rusty, OP, numerous brands in San Diego. So I had a lot of airbrush experience. So they said for me to do my style, because Jepson at the time, who went to Alaska, he had his own style. And I said, well, I could copy his style if you want me to keep that same look. And they said, no, I think, we go for a different look. So I started painting this board, and I kind of heard within the group that they weren't really digging what I was doing. It was completely different than Jepson's work. And so
how would you, sorry to interrupt, how would you describe your style?
It was really more surf style. I did a lot of like surfboard art that I was doing for Rusty and for Hot Stuff and Lightning Bolt, so really a lot of geometric shapes back then. And he was doing kind of a freestyle, kind of weird looking, but looked really easy to do. So I went to my buddy Greg. He was a glasser, and we've stayed up numerous times in San Diego building boards overnight so we can surf them for the swell that was going to hit the next day. So I knew that we can push a board through pretty quick. So I went to Bob and says, hey, I'm just hearing all your staff, not really digging my work. Rather than me paint a bunch of boards for you, why don't we just push this board through and see what happens? And so he was kind of on board, and so Greg and I put this board through in 2 days, and we got it out into the retail spot, and it sold in 45 minutes from the color work.
Wow.
And so there it kind of eased up, and then they just saw the uniqueness in my work, and really started to, I guess, set me into the crew. And I guess, it's kind of hard when you go someplace and to get accepted into a tight-knit manufacturing crew,
Well, that's like a human construct, you're in my tribe or you're not, and you see it in surfing, whether it's in the lineup or if you're not a local, or in skateboarding, if you show up to a park and you don't know anybody. It's a really common thing. Everyone's got to sniff each other out, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like animals, man.
Exactly. So 2 weeks into it, the guy offered me a full-time job, and I said, well, what about your guy who's going to come back? He says, I'll just tell him he doesn't have a job anymore. So he said that he would he would pay for my moving expenses and rent me a place for 3 months. So I gave my notice over the phone. They tried to give me a substantial raise and said, no, I'm moving to Oregon to go paint sailboards. And flew home, sold my car, bought a truck, and was back in a week. And it was so funny because at the time I was renting a 1-bedroom studio on the Strand in Manhattan Beach for $1,400. It was, 600 square feet. I come here and they rented me this 2,000 square foot, three bedroom house that overlooked the Columbia River. I was going, great. Well, I got all my stuff fit like in this room, the size of this room, in the corner of the living room. And so I take it all in and go back down and said, Bob, hey, well, after 3 months, what's my rent going to be? He goes, $350. I said, $3,500? No, $350. I said, $3,500? That's what I'm thinking, you know.
Yeah.
He said, no, $350.
Wow.
And I just went, I made a good move.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are now moving from California to Oregon or Portland, you know, it's like the trendy thing to do. So you were like trend setting way
back then. You know, so
yeah.
So that's kind of what brought me to Oregon, and it was so funny because I'd go out to the River City Saloon, and lo and behold, there's my best friend from San Diego, Sonny Miller, and Don Zabo. So what are you guys doing here? And I said, well, we're shooting snowboarding, but it's August. What do you mean you're shooting snowboarding?
Yeah.
So we're up here at Timberline shooting snowboarding. I said, what? He said, come on up tomorrow and go snowboarding. So I took the day off and went up and went snowboarding with Sonny Miller and Don Zabo in August. So, wow, that's even better now.
And that was your first summer snowboarding experience?
Yeah.
What year was that?
1989.
89, okay. And
you know, so we hiked because no one wanted to pay for a lift ticket, even though I think the lift ticket was $21. I think it was.
Right.
But we hiked a mile, and so that was really cool. And then I got a job at Timberline the winter of '89, running the snowboard program in the rental shop.
Was that the first year they had that program, or that?
First year they had the snowboards in the rental shop.
Okay.
You know, I believe the first year of summer camps was 1988. I believe. Don't.
Sounds right.
Don't completely quote me on that, but in '90 I ended up working for the United States Snowboard Training Center, being a coach with Nordwall and SDs, and he was the second camp. Chris Carroll was the other camp that was happening on Hood, and then High Cascade came in, and Wendell would bring 12 campers from Colorado and use our facility to run his camps.
Wow. Were you based at a government camp, or was this other places around Timberline? Like where was the campus?
The campus for the USTC was actually in Brightwood. It was off hill.
Okay.
Like the ski camps, they were all up in government camp.
Right.
But Bob Gilly was actually about 300 yards to the east of the Arc. That's where his house was.
Okay.
So that's where he had the ramp, and he actually had a little snowboard shop there, and he had 2 sons, and then he rented a house in Timberline Rim, and that's where we had the campers.
How many campers did you have?
10, 12 maybe.
Yeah. For how long?
10 days.
Okay.
They were 10-day camps.
Yeah.
You know. So
that sounds like a good excuse to go snowboarding with some of your friends.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. We were on hill at 8. We ran gates on Palmer till 10, and then we rode half pipes and made a couple of jumps.
Was digging the half pipe part of the deal too?
Yeah, we had to dig the half pipe. that the cat would just make a trench, and we would spend 5 days to dig like a 3-hit half pipe. And campers, like the first 2 days of camp, the campers would help us dig the pipes. And that's when Kurt Heine developed all his Heine tools.
Okay.
He would come the next day and say, dude, I got this shovel here. I think it'll work for the transition. He made them super, super heavy so he can just drop them down the trannies and put snow down. And then he'd come back the next day with a rake. And
yeah.
So that's how he developed the tools. But they were like, I don't know, 15-foot long handles and super heavy.
Wow. So that was like the development of like park crew, if you will, terrain park crew.
Yeah, we are all the park crew.
Yeah. How old were the campers that were like digging the pipes?
Like campers nowadays, 12, 13, 14, 15. A couple older, what Nordwall was. How old was Nordwall? Let's see, I was just 30. Estes was barely 20.
Yeah.
So, it's still a relatively young crew.
Sure, yeah. I was imagining like maybe older teenagers and they're like digging but then a young kid it was like getting after it, but that was like
Lisa Caslow came to camp. She ended up being slalom racer on the U.S. team, and she went to the Olympics.
Okay. Yeah.
She was 15 when she came to camp.
Wow. So like, I mean, early on, snowboarding was definitely had racing.
Yeah.
Like, that was the thing to do, right? That was like...
Racing was, that's what everybody's doing. Slalom racing, giant slalom, and then half pipe. Half pipe was just starting to come.
Okay.
What Boreal had the first half pipe comp, correct?
Did it?
I think so.
Was it Boreal or Soda Springs?
Oh, one of the two.
One of the
one of the
pretty
two.
Close. Yeah. I mean, I was at the Boreal the retro half pipe contest this year, and it was really rad. It was really fun thing to ride, and I mean, it was cool to see how many people came out and like from all over.
I think 90 and 91 summer camp was big. That's when Craig Kelly was coming out, and the Coughlin brothers and Jacoby and Tara Eberhardt and Michelle Taggart was up there, and Jason Ford, Noah Snasnik.
You just described my snowboard magazine collection when I was a kid. That's exactly that was the media that I was consuming as a small kid in Montana growing up, looking at snowboarding, just like, wow. You just dropped like every name that I idolized at about 14 years old.
Brushy and Andy Hetzo and JD Platt, like all those guys were up there.
Yeah, and they were riding or working or like.
They'd come up and just ride. They'd come up and ride our lane, come skate the half pipes, and that's like the first time I met Red Mark Scott. He'd come up to skate. He wouldn't come up to snowboard, but he'd come up and skate our half pipe, and then he told us that he found the spot underneath the Burnside Bridge, and then he built this tranny and that we should go down there and skate. And so,
oh, when was that? So this is
89, 90.
So they were starting to build Burnside.
Yeah, and built this little 3-foot tranny up that back wall.
Yeah,
that was the very first thing. We'd go down there and broom off just a lane that we can push to hit the wall and come back.
Yeah. Wow. The first step, the baby steps of Burnside.
So you made this transition up to Hood River, but you have this surfing and skateboarding background, and so much so that you even mentioned that you were shaping boards and at one point. Did you get in the water up in Hood River and paddle out?
I came up and I didn't bring any of my surf gear at the time. I didn't know that there was surf in Oregon, but they got me into windsurfing, and I wasn't really even interested in windsurfing until those guys said that the Columbia River gets 15-foot swells and waves. They call them waves. I said, no, waves, doesn't get 15 foot. And so they took me to the place called Swell City in the hatchery on a day when it's blowing like 40 miles an hour. And the masts at the time were like 15 to 18 foot tall masts. And you would see the guy go across over into the trough, and he would disappear. You could not see him.
Wow.
And so it's like, wow, there are some waves out there. You know? So I learned how to windsurf, and then a friend of mine that I met in Bali in 1979 surfing Uluwatu. He happened to call my mom. And my mom gave him my phone number and said I moved to Oregon. So I get this call from Chris Corson. He says, dude, you're up in Oregon. Did you surf Seaside yet? I said, no, I didn't bring my surf gear, you know. Dude, I'm sending you a board. And so I immediately went down and bought a map of Oregon and looked at the coastline. And being a surfer, I just saw just point after point after point.
Yep.
And it was kind of quite funny story is my wife's birthday is in February, so she was my girlfriend at the time. So, hey, for your birthday, I'm gonna take you to this place called Seaside.
for your birthday.
Did she surf or anything? Or?
Oh, she grew up in Miami. And she windsurfed, but she did not surf. But
it wasn't like a surf getaway, a couple surf getaway.
It was just a beach getaway.
And you wanted to surf it,
you know, and so I wasn't going to surf. I was going to go check out the surf.
Oh, okay.
And so we stayed at the Shiloh there, right at the end of the promenade, and sure enough, the point was just going off 6 foot and just perfect. And I talked her into renting one of the bikes. We rode the little kind of like car bike down to the point, and it was just fiery.
Were there people out there?
There. I don't know, 4 guys.
Okay,
you know,
in wetsuits.
Yeah, you know. So, so then we end up, and in '91, we had another little snow year, and so in February we were actually skiing on Palmer in the winter time.
Oh, really?
And so where our house was in government camp. Government camp, they didn't plow the roads except for the main road through town. So we had to hike into our house, but in '91 we were able to drive up. So I gave my notice at Timberline, and she was working banquets in the lodge there, and we decided to move to the coast. So we moved out March 1st, and as we're driving out March 1st, it started to dump, and it dumped 50 inches in 3 days. March 1st.
As soon as you're like, this is a bad snow year. I want to move to the coast, go surfing. It's sick of surfing there, and like, all right, yeah. And as soon as you leave,
it dumps.
Did you get the Seaside and it was just flat? Was that like, did that add insult to injury? Was it
no?
Oh, okay. That would have been.
No, we ended up we got a house in Seaside, and then we ended up renting a studio apartment from this couple right on the point in Seaside.
Okay.
So I got a tremendous amount of surf.
Oh, okay.
So I'm pretty new to surfing, and AJ too. I think AJ's first time was just this summer, but I'm totally infatuated and in love with it, and I love this idea of being able to shape your own boards. You mentioned that you guys were shaping the boards for the following day swell. Did you ever make a board that was like the board, or did that happen multiple times? Or what do you remember about some of the highlights of some of the different boards you've made over the years?
Well, you know, I started surfing in 1969, and so when I was 12, I made my money doing ding repair. In Southern California, we went surf Huntington Pier, and then Pat Driscoll and myself shaped our first board. We bought a longboard from a garage sale for $10, and we tore the glass off it. He shaped one side, and I shaped the other side.
The first asymmetric.
So it was a true asymmetrical surfboard, right? Because I think I shaped a pintail on my side of the surfboard, and he shaped a swallowtail on his side.
Awesome.
And then we glassed it, and so on and so forth. But then through skateboarding, I skateboarded for Castor. Castor was a surfboard builder in San Diego, so that's when I truly got to hone my skill. And Bill Castor and Gary Gidrum and Tim Eberly and Mike Diffenderfer and Donald Takayama took me under their wings and taught me how to shape. And so I would shape my boards. And one particular time, Tom Eberly, he had 2 shaping rooms, so I went in and was shaping this 6'3" pintail, and he helped me draw the outline. So I went in there, shut the door, did it, and he was in the next room. And he ended up shaping the exact same shape as I did.
Wow!
Right? And then we glassed and we went to the beach, and I rode my board and was just stoked on how well it worked. Right? And then he comes in and he goes to his van and pulls out the board, exact same board I have. I didn't know he was doing that. And he goes, "Here, no, go try mine." And so I tried his, and his just worked light years ahead of mine. And he said, everything works. It's just a matter how good it works. Mm-hmm. And so I shaped the exact same board you did, but then he showed me all the little tweaks that he did on his board that I forgot or I didn't see to do on mine. And that's it was more of a learning lesson, and he was teaching me. So as you shape more and more boards, you learn to tweak things, and you find out how much rocker affects the board or your rails or your bottom contour or your top contour and outline. There's just so many variables that go into making a board work well.
Do you remember what some of the differences were between those 2 boards?
Well, yeah, he had a little bit more V in the tail, which made your board go from rail to rail easier. He put a little bit harder rails in the tail for a little bit more bite. He added just a hair more kick in the nose, so your board won't purl in the water. There was quite a few things that he did, and he set his fins an 1/8 inch further up than what I set mine up.
An eighth of an inch. It made a difference.
Yeah, just incredible amount of difference. Pumping down the line, the speed you got off it, the holding power. But yeah, you do shape boards, and you get that magical board, and you ride this board, and it's super magical, and then your next one you try and do the exact same thing, and sometimes it just never works. So
really,
so a lot of people will come in and get custom made boards and bring the board in. I want a board just like this because it's so magical, and you have to tell them it's all going to be different. We can it'll be the same length, be the same width, it'll be the same thickness, but it just may not ride the same. The foam might be a little bit harder, might be softer, might have more flotation, it might sink more, just because surfboards are truly one of a kind. They're all man-made. A machine is not pumping them out.
Why is that?
Now we have shaping machines, but even the shaping machines, right? It just roughs it, and then a shaper finishes it off. Well, what happens is you shape a board, then an airbrusher might airbrush it and put a lot of paint on, not a little bit of paint, and then the glasser is going to glass it. The glasser is going to put more resin on or less resin, depending. And then you hot coat it, so that hot coater might put more resin on or less resin. then even if you're working on 3 boards in a row that you have a batch of resin, one board's going to have more resin than the other board, and then the sander is going to reshape the board. So the key ingredients in surfboard building is the shaper and the sander has got to see eye to eye, because the sander is going to completely change the shape of the board.
Wow.
And so there's just so many variables that go into building surfboards.
Then there's this other whole variable of the ocean. Even if you have a consistent break, so it's a rock break or a reef break or something that's not really moving much, like the sand breaks that we have out here, the swell direction can change, the wave period can change, the size obviously is going to change. So there's, maybe you just had that one day that made that everything feel perfect on that board, and you want to recreate that, and that's like a needle in a haystack. There's too many variables.
Right. I just watched the surf comps at lower trestles, and Kelly Slater caught his first wave, and he ripped it apart, and then the second wave he caught, he did this air and got out of control, but somehow grabbed his board in the air, and he came down on his board and stood up, but his knees buckled the board, so you could tell the rest of the waves that he caught in the heat that it just wasn't performing as it was the heats prior to it. And he even said that my board buckled, but for me to come in, since the tide was so low, I would have lost 4 minutes or 3 minutes out of that heat, and he didn't want to risk. He didn't want to risk that part of it.
Yeah, he was so mellow in that post interview. I go to WSL.com and use the heat analyzer tool whenever I miss it. So you can just kind of skip. It gives you a little indicator as to when somebody caught a wave or when they're interviewing or when there's a replay. And I just skipped. I saw the air. Lots of people were posting that on social media, and it was super amazing, by the way. But I skipped to the interview. I wanted to hear what he had to say about it. And he was just super mellow, kind of like, I don't really know what happened. But the only thing that, to me, he looked emotional about in the interview was the board. You could tell that he really liked that shape.
And he put 2 big old knee dents in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a pretty ongoing discussion. Of course, I watched it live, and I would have scored it high. I had it scored I think I scored him a 6.85 is what I would have gave him. They gave him a 4.71.
Yeah.
And I mean, yes, he made it, but didn't make it. But he caught it and landed on his board and stood back up before he even got to the bottom of the wave and made the turn. I mean, he didn't miss a beat on that wave.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he caught it and he was struggling to get back on and had to catch up with the wave. I mean, he didn't miss a beat on that maneuver.
It was obviously amazing, and I think it's funny, AJ and I were just talking about this a couple hours ago. Yeah. I think that the judges probably respect it on a personal level, but don't want to start a precedence for landing flat on your board potentially, even though maybe he had knees down or whatever first. I think that maybe they want to just say, hey, let's not even go in that direction. Let's push to keep the quality of landings high.
And that's quite possible. I'm sure it's open for discussion, but yeah.
I equated it to when you see skaters do a flip trick and then they land sitting down on their board.
True, or decking on a half pipe.
Yeah, but they still ride it out, and it's incredible. But in a contest scenario, like Nate was saying, there has to be consistency. And so where do you make that call? What is, I don't surf. And so it's a little bit I don't know what I'm talking about, but it seemed like, okay, I can see the judge's point of view. It was incredible. I was blown away by it, but can they score that as high even as you would?
Right.
Right.
It was even interesting to hear Joe Trappell, who's one of the announcers and who's quite the diplomat. He even kind of sided with wow, that was an extremely, he had some comments. I don't remember specifically what they were, but he was surprised that it was as low of a score as it was.
Yeah, most of them said that was the best 4.71 ride I'd ever seen.
I mean, he did keep surfing, and he did like another cut back.
He did a 360.
He did a 360.
He came out of that thing, man, at bottom turn, and did a 360. I mean, come on. But yeah.
Another one for the record books for Kelly.
I thought I may have scored a little bit too low, but yeah, you could be totally right on.
How much did he lose the heat by? I just saw that clip.
He lost it probably by 3/4 of a point. Not much.
Oh,
I know,
so that would have made a difference.
Yeah.
That made a huge difference.
I mean, Nick Fanny killed it.
Yep.
Nick Fanny was on it. You know, and truthfully, I had Nick Fanny winning the heat anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the board control that he had was incredible. I mean, Kelly, he kind of caught his rail a couple of times. He bobbled a couple of turns through his heat. You know, as to where Nick Fanny was just carving that rail back off the bottom, off the top, and
right.
So,
I mean, that's it's ultimately really subjective. Like everything, it's abstract. It's subjective. It's not like, you have to do this many times to get that many points. Right. It's like, well, how did it look? Yeah. And then, so that it's always a tough call.
Kelly's 40. He's an old dude.
And
comparatively on the circuit, I mean, he's phenomenal, and we all think that at his age he shouldn't be able to keep up the young kids, but he's blowing them away still.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely with that move stood out in the contest at least. Yeah, which I can almost say arguably is more important as far as marketing yourself. And
I mean, in what industry do you have an 11-time world champ? 11 times.
And that's what I was saying. Kelly is the best athlete in sports. Because I don't know of any other athlete that has done that many times.
You don't have a basketball player or football player being 11-time MVP, right?
Right. And being, I mean, Michael Jordan he won the championship 6 times.
He's up there. Serena Williams is a pretty up there as far as a tennis player.
Yeah.
Tiger will probably golfing, but
golf's not as high impact for sure. To that point, what do you do to maintain your body and health to be able to go? I mean, you've been skateboarding and snowboarding and surfing for decades.
I stay active. I guess really that's what it is. I mean, my wife and I chose not to chase the money. We chose to be active with our children. I'm at Wendell, so I'm 13 years old for all year long. Yes. I think that's all it is. That you get out, you keep doing it, and some of my friends who I skateboarded with and ended up going out and going into the reality of the work world and have families and all that, but they choose not to do any activity. And then I have friends who will go and do activities, take vacation, go skateboarding, or go to the mountains or go fishing. I just think it's just keeping active in your sport, And
okay.
For me, I regulate how good of a day I have if I don't fall. And I've also learned to so to speak keep my wheels on the ground.
Okay.
I don't have to do the airs anymore. I don't have to get above the lip or whatever it is.
Well,
except if it's an 18-foot powder day, then
then
we're flying off.
Yeah,
right?
Because it's softer landing. You can kind of. Yeah. Well, wasn't there a time when you maybe stepped away from at least skating, and you went into that world that?
Yeah. We had restaurants, but even still, I don't search to go skateboarding every day. I don't search to go snowboarding every day or surfing every day. And there was a time period where I wasn't skating a bunch. I always owned a skateboard, but if you, AJ, or Nate gave me a phone call and said, "Dude, I got a pool," I'd be finding my skateboard right after we hung up.
Yeah.
And it's just like if it snows 8 inches, we go snowboarding. Yeah. But if it hasn't snowed in a week and the whole crew is going to go up, I may not.
Right.
I won't per se go down and go cruise a skate park by myself anymore these days. Sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not my number one priority like it used to be.
What is your number one priority?
To look in the paper, look in the obituaries, and make sure my name's not in it. I only said that because we at our restaurant, Al would come and he was an older guy, and that was the first thing you did. Went to the newspaper and looked in the obituaries and said, "It's a good day. My name's not in there."
Yeah.
So
I guess that's true.
Family and work probably is my number one priority. Still, probably health. But
yeah, you have 2 daughters that are doing making some big moves in the snowboard industry, right?
Yeah, well, mostly my youngest daughter. My eldest daughter, she did well, but I believe she was afraid to get hurt, so she can only take it so far. But she did well through her high school and through nationals. My youngest one is definitely more focused on it. So she does part-time school and online school and travels with the band crew. And her freshman year, she was OISA, Oregon International Scholastic Skateboard or Snowboard Association. And she was Oregon State halfpipe champ, and last year she won nationals in halfpipe. So she's on her way.
Wow. She's definitely killing it.
Yeah.
How did your daughters come to snowboarding? Was there any? This is something that comes up on the podcast a bunch with guests that have kids. How did they introduce them to it? So many of them want to be careful to not feel like they're pushing by any means. How did they come to it?
We just took vacations to the mountains, and so my kids have always been on a skateboard ever since they were 1.
Wow.
I could tell you that both my girls have gone 40 miles an hour by the time they're a year and a half, 2 years old. by me putting them on my skateboard and bombing hills.
That's so gnarly.
We rode Burnside together at 2, tandeming.
Wow.
We grew up. They grew up going to short tens every day, up until we moved back to Hood River, and we would come. There'd be 3 families on the coast that all the boys we snowboarded. So we would take the family to Mount Hood. The day school got back in on January 2nd, we rented a place up there and stayed for a week and brought the families up there. So they all snowboarded, skied super young, and that was just something we did. It wasn't like we were going snowboarding. We just took a family vacation to the mountains, and that was part of it. Playing in the mountain, playing on whether it be snowboarding or skiing or making snowmen or sledding, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And they enjoyed it, and there was times where they got into ballet, so I went to ballet lessons.
Awesome.
Took them ballet lessons.
Awesome.
And saw recitals and as they got older, they really liked snowboarding, so we were putting 45 days on the hill from the coast.
From the coast.
From the coast.
Whoa.
You know, so we'd always come up midweek for a couple of days and stay up here and since we both worked at Timberline, Steve Cruz would give my family seasons passes. Going on 20 years, he's given my whole family season passes. So we come up and ride, and then we decided to move back to Hood River for the school system and for the kids wanting to get close to the mountain. Now that we live 3 hours from the coast, they all want to learn how to surf now.
That's how it goes, right? Yeah. You know?
So it's on their dime now. So to speak.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of things that we haven't even touched on. You mentioned that you had restaurants for a period of time, and you're currently at Wendell's managing all of their food services. What attracted you to that industry?
Through skateboarding for Tom Sims and a few other companies that they really took care of. They really took care of me and taught me the good things in life, eating at really nice restaurants and drinking nice beer and having nice glasses of wine. So, that when I traveled, all my travel was for the most part like first class travel. I was able to sit in first class and eat at nice restaurants, or I would eat at the people's houses that I stayed. We never did fast food, and so that was kind of a luxury that I had, and so and the group of guys that I live with: Chris Stropel, Kurt Kimball, Ed Economy, Brad Tranlin. We loved to cook, so we always went to the grocery store and bought food, and we'd always cook these great feasts. When I moved to the coast, I built a ramp for the city of Seaside, and then my wife has got a degree in hotel and restaurant management, so she got a job right off the bat in the restaurant industry. And after building the ramp at Seaside, I was having a hard time finding work. And so she hired me, and I became a busser, and then I became a waiter. So I waited tables at the Wayfair in Cannon Beach, and I told my manager that I wanted to go in the kitchen for a week to see how the food was prepared, because I said that if I can go in the kitchen for a week, then I think I'd become a better waiter, because I would know what it takes to cook the food, the plate. So I wouldn't have to go back and says, "Hey, is there any garlic in the garlic prawns?"
Right.
Like if you got to eat and you ask if something's in it, most waiters and waitresses, I don't know, let me go ask.
Right. And
so that's what I did. And then we moved to Manzanita, and Tom Watson and a couple other sailboard companies wanted me to start airbrushing sailboards for them again. So I drive out from the coast to Hood River and paint sailboards. But every time I came out here, I would take his shaping room to paint, so he couldn't do it. So I talked him into say, okay, I'll buy a van. I'll come up once a week, grab boards, and take them to my garage down the coast, paint them, and just do that. And more and more people found out that I was doing that. So 10 boards turned into 15 boards and turned into 25 boards a week, plus waiting tables. So I went to go look for a place to rent to paint, and I found a place in downtown Manzanita. So I set up a paint booth in the back, and then opened a little retail surf shop, skate shop in the front. Next door was the Blue Sky Cafe, and Julie Bergen at the time was looking for an assistant chef, and one of the cooks at the Wayfair, that was his longtime dream, was to cook at this restaurant. So I said, hey, Julie's looking for a cook, and so he went down there, interviewed a couple of times, and they were ready to pull the trigger, and then he got promoted to executive chef at the Wayfair. So he turned the Blue Sky Cafe down, and so I went to Julie and says, well, hey, what does it take to cook, And so she mentioned something to me, and I said, yeah, I think I could do that. So I would work my shop, and then I gave up waiting tables, and I would walk next door and cook at night. And so she kind of taught me how to. I knew how to cook, but she taught me how to cook in a restaurant, and I just took the production of making skateboards and surfboards, and just took it to cooking, because that's all it was. It's just production, right?
It's literal ingredients. You broke it down to the ingredients in the process.
And and she is a pretty eclectic restaurant, so she taught me to think outside the box, so to speak.
Right.
Well, anyway, the landlord of my surf shop and her restaurant had an art gallery in Nehalem that one of the owners got cancer, so they decided to close the art gallery, and so he was left with an open building. So he approached me to do a burger, fish and chip joint, and I went to Bob and says, if you're really going to do a restaurant, you should talk to my wife. She's got the degree in hotel and restaurant management. So we put them together, and so we opened what was called the Hill House Deli. And at the time, it was just coffee, pastries in the morning, and then sandwiches for lunch.
And do you still have the skate and surf shop going at this time, or?
I did. So what would happen was, I still did the skate and surf, and I still cooked at night. But if the restaurant got busy, I would close my surf shop, drive a mile, and help them out the restaurant, and then come back and reopen the shop. And so I did that. I don't want to say about a year or so. And then they told me to come to work for the deli, and she paid me $500 a month to do that. And so we decided to close the shop, and I told the guys that I wasn't going to airbrush sailboards anymore. And so I would work our restaurant in the morning and then cook at night at the Blue Sky Cafe. And then from there, our friends would come in after surfing, and they would want eggs, so I would cook them eggs. And at the time, we just had an electric stove, just like in your house stove, right? Okay. So we started flipping eggs for our friends, and then more people caught on. So we started doing so I developed a breakfast menu, and I started cooking breakfast, and then we upgraded to regular gas stoves, and so now we're a breakfast joint and a coffee, breakfast, and lunch deli. And then our business partner, Bob Finzer, he was part owner of another restaurant 2 blocks away, and the guy was gonna close down, and he offered Bob to buy him out. So he came to us and asked if we wanted a second restaurant. So we went down there and toured the restaurant, and we said, no way, we don't want to do it. It was kind of a horrible operation, and we understood why he was going to get out of the business. And So we advised Bob not to buy them out.
What was horrible about it? Was it just dilapidated or just a poor setup?
Yeah, it was just dirty and run down, and we just saw just a lot of work to do, and plus we didn't want a second one.
Right.
To be quite honest.
It sounds like you're already like, where do you sleep as it stands?
Right. So anyway, weeks go by and he comes. All right. Those us keys to say you guys have a second restaurant. so we ended up getting it anyway, and so I went down there and started to clean it out and found all kinds of like rat turds in the back, and he had built this bar, and so I went under the building and the sink in the bar, it just drained into the ground. Yeah, it's just horrible, you know. So we talked, Bob. It says, if we're truly going to do this, Bob, we're going to close it. We're going to gut it. We're going to redo it, and we're going to not be a pizza pasta joint. And we'll do seafood, you know. So we created a restaurant called the Halem Dock Restaurant, and we did lunch and dinner, fine dining seafood. But we called it fine dining with kids. We wanted kids to be able to come in there. So I hung all my skateboard and surf and snowboard memorabilia on the wall. So it was a full on surf museum and skate museum.
It's an unpretentious, it's an unpretentious fine dining experience.
Yeah, right.
So not only could you the grandparents bring the grandkids in or families come in, but you can come in and have a great meal with your date. You know, we had it all sectioned off, and so it was pretty awesome. And then all of a sudden all the traveling skate teams would come in and eat, and
they get dressed up, and
they would leave some boards, and we'd hang it on the walls, and it was pretty awesome. Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm for the most part I'm self-taught. I'm a self-taught chef.
Right.
You know, and I read cookbooks, and I started watching the cooking channel, and that's how I learned.
And you had your wife there to guide you as well.
Yeah, you know, but my wife and I, we take two different approaches to cooking. She cleans as she goes when she cooks. I dirty every single dish and turn the kitchen in disaster, and then when I'm done, I clean up.
Right.
So actually, in our first restaurant, we were cooking together, and she got frustrated with me, and we got in this full-on, all-and-out argument war in the back, and where we actually went out front and told everybody to leave the restaurant.
How many people were in there at the time?
I don't know, maybe 10 or so, you know. And
so you were so mad you didn't even care about them paying.
Yeah, exactly. We just threw them all out.
Oh my God!
I think that's what we said. If you eaten and you haven't paid, you're lucky. If you ordered and you haven't got your food, we're so sorry. We kicked them out and locked the doors and went at it. And
can you imagine in a small town how quickly that information spread up and down the coast?
Well, luckily the internet wasn't around yet.
Right.
So
people have been on Yelp like crazy.
So then we came up to the agreement was she takes care of the front of the house and I take care of the back of the house. So she doesn't come in the kitchen and I don't tell her how to run the dining room. And that worked for the whole time. And yeah, we actually opened back up 2 hours later.
Under that agreement.
Yeah. And then a couple of locals came back next day. Oh, we didn't know if you're going to be open today.
We didn't know if you're going to be married today.
You know, and so that was 1994.
Yeah.
And then we actually became the first internet cafe on the coast.
Okay.
So we were the third customer of the telephone company that brought the internet in, and we had a computer in the lower dining room with a 28.8 modem.
What year was that?
1984.
84.
No, it's 94.
Oh, 94.
94.
Still 94. Wow.
And that was funny because that's when like AOL was really big.
Yeah, I remember.
And you can go on the AOL chat and talk to somebody on the East Coast, and you would type something in, and you'd sit there and you wait. Maybe 45 seconds later, oh, how are you? You know?
Yeah.
Oh, good. We're in Oregon. Where are you? 45 seconds later, we're in Washington D.C. You know?
Yeah.
We thought that was so cool.
I mean, the first before that, that was really difficult, and people take it for granted now, especially kids are just used to it. It used to just immediate, and that was like.
And then I think 95 is when we got our first cell phone. So I think it was 95 or 96.
Yeah.
And they were probably like huge bricks in comparison to what we have today.
Yes, they were.
They could.
I mean, what the walkie-talkies that we use on the hill are smaller.
Right. Right. So there's another aspect of your life that I wanted to touch on, and I'm wondering how the pool business fits in is kind of woven in through all of these stories.
That's a really good story.
Okay.
I started skateboarding in 1967, and then really got involved in 1969 when we started surfing, and that's when. And so, the first memories of me skateboarding were downhilling and slalom and freestyle, and then we started riding banks because we were pretending they were waves, and we would do our little surf moves.
Getting barreled on the street.
Yep, exactly. And like those sprinklers that kind of go back and forth. We'd set it up. Yeah, we'd set it up over the sidewalk, and we'd get barreled. It was pretty sick. And Monterey Park, I grew up on just a ton of hills. The hill that I grew up was a 55-mile-an-hour hill. So,
jeez.
So we would haul ass from the very beginning days.
What kind of wheels were you skating then?
I started with steel wheels and then clay wheels, and we'd bomb all the hills with clay wheels. We'd get pulled on my buddy's motorcycle going like 20 and then let go and then go down the hill.
Wow.
And then when the urethane wheel came in, that was awesome. Then we started getting pulled going 50.
I've never been on clay wheels. Is it really soft, like a low durometer?
No, it's hard.
Oh, it's really hard. Okay.
We can go out my carport and you can play around one.
Okay.
So anyway, and then Greg Weaver came on the cover in 1974, riding a skateboard in a pool. So I knew my neighbor had a pool, so I looked over my yard and the pool was empty. So I started skateboarding in his pool. And then in 75 was kind of like the water drought we have now. Mm-hmm. And so they were telling everybody that they couldn't water their lawns and you couldn't fill your swimming pools, and a lot of people couldn't afford to keep water in their pools, and so and that's how the big skateboarding in pools really happened back then. So there were so many empty pools. We found out that people in Beverly Hills go on vacation for months at a time. So we would sneak in these just huge mansions and try and drain their pools. And
you woun't even look for the ones that were already drained. You'd go with like a full pool and drain it?
Oh, yeah.
Would you swim before or just you?
yeah, maybe you jump in them, but
Yeah.
I mean, we were 15 years old, 14 and 15, right? And and we kept getting caught, and so Chris Jopo and I were hanging out in his barn because he lived in his barn upstairs and probably taking massive amounts of bong hits or whatever. And we're just going, what are we going to do? How can we drain these pools or sneak into people's backyards without getting caught? And so we decided to come up with the fictitious pool company. So that's how IPS came about, Inouye's Pool Service. And so we made T-shirts and made the sign, serviced by IPS, and put it on the front yard and went back there and started draining pools, and we kind of got away with it after that.
So the pool company isn't getting real contracts. It's just providing some cover.
Yeah, definitely. It's just definitely cover and go back there and then you can scope out the houses that have like pools half empty and you would see who lives in them. Sometimes you can go to the door with 12-pack of Budweiser. We'd get one of our friends to buy us beer to hand it to the people and thing and say if we can go back there and clean their pool out, and they'd let us skate it. And
so now it's getting close to being legit. We're using the barter system as a business.
Kinda,
you were 15, you were like... That's incredible. That's amazing.
Definitely with the pool service, we got to go in more backyards. I mean, and we could just say, well, it's my dad's company. He sent us here, and we're clean your pool out.
It's my dad's company.
Or we'd give them some BS story that, hey, we're contracted by the cities to make sure all the pools don't have water, so you're not having mosquito infested backyard. That whole
So
9
clever.
yards, And,
wow.
And as we got older, we were able to go to the bank and say, we'll take care of all your foreclosed homes that have pools in them.
No way.
And they give some of them give us the list of houses with the pools, and oh yeah.
So were they paying you? Like, would the bank pay you to clean the pools? You just
we
we'll
just
go
do it for free.
Oh, we'll go clean your pools or whatever because we'll just do it. And did they know you were skating them, or did they?
I don't think so. Maybe some of them might have, but
Right.
But a lot of times you could do the recon and see who lives in the house and get permission,
Right.
But some you definitely have to top the fence and go guerrilla style. And I can tell you, I skated a lot of 15-minute pools.
Really?
Yeah.
You drop in and then
it's angry guy come out with a machete or a weed whacker or a shotgun. Let the Doberman pinchers out.
Oh.
No. And now, now everybody's got pool service in skateboarding. I mean, we taught Salva how to find pools. So I was definitely we were definitely the first skaters to think of that. At least we think we were.
The going to the banks is so amazing to me because here are these bankers thinking like these nice young upstanding gentlemen. This pool service company just wants to do this huge public service. Well, this is just exemplary.
Wow.
Did you slick your hair back a little bit to go in, or put on a collared shirt or anything to go into the bank?
Probably not.
Probably not. We did a t-shirt that says IPS and it was full service.
That's all you need.
If you see my logo, it's got a guy skateboarding on it.
We're just gonna clean your pool. You're not gonna skate them, are you? No, we don't. What's skateboarding?
We're gonna clean them. We developed a new urethane technique.
We just have cleaner on the wheels, and we just skate around and it gets it clean.
We're gonna grind the coping clean a little bit.
I mean, snowboarders kind of do that now, at least with street snowboarding, like wearing construction vests.
Right.
You know, and even I've heard of skaters like going into construction gear and going in and grabbing stuff, and like I've definitely worn construction gear, and it looks like you're just shoveling snow. Mm-hmm. You know, and people aren't as susceptible, and so that's always kind of been.
Yeah, you can't bring attention on yourself. So I mean, so we would drain the pools, and we'd scope out the property and see how we can sneak back in. And so we would drain the pools, and then we'd come back, a day or two later, and figure out how to go through this person's yard to go to this person's yard to jump the fence to get in the backyard.
That's incredible. That's absolutely. I'm blown away by that because I kind of knew. I didn't know exactly what it was. I thought like, oh, pool cleaning, but then it was just to skate these pools. And that's such a clever thing to do at that age. And I couldn't think of that now.
I don't think there was very many 15-year-olds that would have thought of that.
No.
When was the last time that you kind of enacted the pool service?
A month ago with Salva?
Yes.
Still doing
it. Still doing it.
Still 15. Still 13. 13 between 13 and 15.
Yeah, I went down. Was it? What was in May after the Protect pool party? After the band's pool party, Bryce and I got together with Salva and went on a pool mission around his house. So Salva had a couple of pools that he had scoped out, but hadn't. He just did the recon on it, and so we went and bucketed 2 different pools. And I was looking over your shoulder and so on and so forth. And
it's so rad. I can count the number of pools that I've done that with on one hand, and scared and just was much more.
Like you're picturing the screen too.
Yeah. There's actually maybe. I need to start a pool company. Clearly. So you mentioned Bryce, and I know that you just re-released a board that you used to skate, a version of your caster skateboard, right? Could you, as we start to wind down here, maybe talk a little bit about that board?
Yeah, Bryce approached me last summer in Portland. And, he wanted to do a guest model with me, and he actually had a sample of a cutaway, and he wanted to give that to me, and I told him, well, if we're gonna do the cutaway, I want to do my original shape from 1979, and he was all for it. It took us a good year in prototypes for Paul Schmidt to get it right. Plus, I also told him why I designed the cutaway. Why? Because there was a purpose in the design, in which it just wasn't a different shape. So yeah, it took Paul quite many chances to get the cutaway exactly the way I wanted it.
What is the purpose in the shape?
Well, what it is among that it looked kind of like a surfboard shape, the winger, but the cutaway is for it to have the rail line come in, and then as it goes to the tail is the same width as a regular skateboard, so the rail line angles back out toward the tail. So when we back then, when you were doing frontside grinds, we weren't doing the stand-up 5-0 grinds like they do nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of pushing from underneath the coping and smacking the coping and lapping over. So my theory was to have the rail line angle back out, so when you're pushing, you have a little leverage on the rail.
Yeah.
If that kind of makes sense. It'd be easier if I can show you on my board what I really meant.
We'll put a picture of it in the show notes.
Yeah, so that there definitely was a purpose. Plus, it was kind of the warning track of where I grabbed my board for frontside errors. Also,
okay.
But so we got it right, and according to them, it was the best and fastest selling model for Lifeblood.
Wow!
So really stoked on that. We're working on a second version of it, and actually we're working on a second and a third version of it.
Oh, wow.
So we're going to release one in the fall, and then we're going to release a miniature shape for the younger kids, I think, in the springtime.
Very cool.
Wow.
That's rad. I love what Bryce is doing with Lifeblood, and I'm glad that you worked with him.
Yeah, I'm really stoked that I'm part of that group now.
Yeah, and you're still painting boards. I know, like at camp staff sale, like kids could buy custom boards, and that's like,
yeah,
I think that's incredible. Like to have a board by you, and kids love them. They're like, oh, I got this board.
Yeah, I definitely took the rough approach using spray paint. And actually this year at staff sale, I didn't get it together to paint the boards before staff sale, so I painted them at staff sale.
Yeah.
And so when I first started painting boards with spray paint, being an airbrush artist, everything kind of is precise and you take your time, and so I was trying to get my spray paint to look good, so I was spending too much time trying to get it too perfect, and then I watched a bunch of YouTube videos of the street artists doing spray paint art.
Yeah,
and they don't take more than 10 minutes or 8 minutes to do them. So that was my whole theory. Now is I'm going to paint a board in under 8 minutes. 8 minutes is the longest I'll ever take on a board. So I found out that the rougher and the quicker you do it, for some reason, the better it looks.
Just flowing through it. And I love that you used YouTube for it. I think that's one of the most powerful things about what we have available to us now is I use it all the time for working on my vehicle or doing something around the house. I changed a timing belt on an interference engine on my Toyota using a YouTube video that, I wouldn't have even approached 10 years ago pre-YouTube. There's no way.
Exactly. And, that's, I guess, I do so much. Even today, I search YouTube for different cooking ideas. I use YouTube on how to work with software.
Yep.
I use YouTube on how to design and code all my web pages. And I'm sure you guys used it a little bit to learn how to make this podcast.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Yeah. I know that we've got to wind down here soon, but I think we'd be remiss if we didn't ask about your nickname. I know that you've covered it probably multiple times throughout the years, but I think our audience would love to hear.
Nickname Wally. There was a group of us, Dean Eddowes, Gary Zapp, Jeff Walters, Pat Grisco, Tim Bartholomew, Bruce Goodfellow, Dean Eddowes. That was our skateboard crew. 1973 clay wheels, and surfing down the streets, playing in the playground, playing at our school. Marquepo High School had this wall that had probably 3 to 6 inch transition at the bottom.
Okay.
And it went up 3 feet. Took a 45-degree angle in for about 3 inches, and then the wall continued up. Just some artistic architecture that the guy did. So having a little tranny on there and a lip that was like 3 feet up, we figured we would just smack the wall and try and get up and do an off the lip on the lip. That's what we were trying to do. We were emulating surfing, so back then, since I did it backside, it probably would have been like Kilo, Dane Kilo, or Terry Fitzgerald, or Larry Birdman smacking the lip backside, and spraying and whatever.
Right.
And we all did it for days and days, and finally I made it, and then I made it again, and made it again. And I figured out kind of how to hit the wall just in a way where I could ride it and then come down on my board. And so Gary Zach pointed to me and says, "Wally!" and so that's how I got my nickname. And it really wasn't that I invented the wall ride or anything. It's just we were just hitting this wall, and he just called me Wally. So
yeah,
and then we probably didn't skate that much more after that, and that's when we found drainage stitches and other skate parks that were much funner. But so Wally just stuck.
Yeah.
So I've been Wally ever since.
Was this like 8th grade?
72, 69 would have been 10, 11, 12. Yeah, 8th grade or so, right? 8th grade, 73.
Yeah.
70,
So was it like a Jersey barrier, kind of? Like the feature? Is that a...
Kind of like a Jersey barrier, but not as much tranny as a Jersey barrier.
Oh,
Jersey
wow.
barrier's got a lot of tranny.
Sure.
In actuality.
Yeah, so this definitely was like more of
a... so I think what it was the playground was asphalted, and that whoever laid the asphalt just piled up in the corner of the bottom of the building. I don't think it was an intentional thing. It was probably just a sloppy asphalt job.
Right.
They they didn't have the machinery to go 90 degrees up against the wall to make it perfectly flat.
Okay.
So maybe the machine that did it pushed the excess asphalt into the corner crack of the building.
Yeah, and you just use it to skate.
Yeah.
I always think it's amazing. Skaters, I don't know if they get enough credit to look at something like that, something that's just this man-made to create this structure and can turn it into something more incredible,
It's pretty amazing what the kids are doing now on all that stuff. I want to know, I'd love to sit and talk to the old architects who designed this stuff and get what their feeling is on us skaters skating that stuff.
Well, I know Edmond Bacon, who did Love Park, was really, I think he's no longer alive, but he thought it was incredible. He was like, this is awesome skate. Like, he looked at it like performance art, or like, it was good for society that skaters are taking his creation and using it for something. And they even changed Love Park and they adapted to it. And he thought that was incredible. Yeah. So I always think of him when I think of public spaces like that, where, I don't know. Like, to me, I don't understand why more people aren't blown away.
Right. Like the architects, like in Barcelona.
Oh, yeah.
All that artsy stuff, and that, and I'm sure they got to be blown away that these kids were riding their skateboards on them.
Yeah, it wasn't intended. I swear sometimes I'll see structures, especially like transition shaped things. I'm like, that's got to be built for skating. That's like, people are there, like in the back of their mind, like, I'm going to just kind of make this and won't tell the company that,
Right. The architect is doing his own gig, his own pool service gig. He's like, I'm going to be an architect. and I'm going to build a bunch of cool shit to skate, and then we're going to skate it. Well, Wally, man, I could talk to you forever. I thank you so much for taking the time out today to talk with AJ and I. It's been awesome. Is there anything else you want to cover, or anything else you wanted to cover, AJ, on your end?
I feel the same way. I mean, I could listen to you all day. Honestly, this could be a 10-hour podcast. There's so much. Like, I didn't know where to start, honestly. And like I said, I appreciate you letting me come into your home. This is incredible. And
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of subjects that I can talk about.
Sure.
I mean, I've seen and done a lot in the last 56 years of my life.
Well, let's do it again in a year.
Let's do that. You know, if anything, I'm just gonna leave your listeners with my quote of "Conserve water, drain your pool."
Conserve water, drain your pool. I think Wally might have just fixed the California water crisis. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for all of the positive iTunes reviews. Thanks again to everyone that's been using the Amazon banner ad. Check out the boards that I designed over at Custom Cult Snowboards and use their software calculator to tweak them to your liking. Use the discount code TNSP at shredsoles.com by the end of the month to get your boots ready for winter. We just saw the first snowflakes of the season here in southern Pennsylvania today. Winter's on the way. Until next week, peace.
Take 28. And this is Wally Inouye, and you're tuned in to the Not Snowboarding podcast.
Awesome, dude.
Coming to you from Hood River, Oregon.
I screwed it up. I'm sorry.
Nay.
I'm fired.